welcome to Automation Caffeine, your dose of invigorating business automation tips, packed as fun anecdotes and weird questions. We have a different guest every episode, and today we're joined by Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah. We described you as an actor turned marketer turned no code guru turned tech founder. I had to read that up because it's too much for me to remember. But like we always ask our guests to introduce themselves in 3 words. So how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I would say no coder, Atlantan, and dad. Yeah.
Dad of how many are you?
So we've got two little kiddos. Izzy is now 3 and Leo is now 1. They
Wow.
keeping us young, keeping us going.
Keep you on your toes.
Yep.
Yeah. I was saying we have 2 kittens, and it makes me have enormous respect for people who have actually got kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's another thing.
I know it.
Before we get started, for our live audience, if you have any questions to Phil, please ask them in the comments, and we'll pick them up at the end during our live Q&A. Let's see, Phil. It took some effort, but I think actually I found you.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think I did. So for the people at Phil acted in his early career, and I found him in what is this, Phil? Maybe it's better.
Yeah, this is an episode of Law and Order I did when I was younger called The Losing Season. That's the OG Law and Order Jerry Orbach there in this shot. And yeah, it was one of my my first on screen notable credits. The joke back in the day, and I think it's still a joke in New York. It's like you're not a New York actor until you've been on Law and Order with a few lines, and that was kind of my stint. And the funny thing is, I was only 13, and I remember my dad had driven me into the city, right?
Yeah.
From New Jersey. We live in New Jersey, so it's about an hour drive. And it was for this quick audition where I messed up the line. I had one line and I messed it up. And my dad heard it and he's like, I drove you all this way to mess up one line. I'm like, Dad, you know what? I got a good feeling about this one.
I bet you said that every time just to make him feel good.
It's funny. For an orthopedic surgeon father, he was very supportive of my acting career when I was doing it. And so,
nice.
And then I got it. And it was an amazing experience.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I still get every now and then I'll get $1 or $2 checks in the mail from residuals.
Oh, wow. Really?
This many years later. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's good. It's such a huge show, though. I mean, so you studied acting or something when you were a kid? You wanted to become an actor? How because you were 13, man. That's young.
Yeah, I was young. So even younger than that, I mean, I was in my first commercial for Continental Airlines, which is an older airline, for all the older millennials and up out there. Yeah. When I was about 2-3 weeks old. So my mom was an actress. And I always really admired that. And so from when I was a kid, through acting, when I was in middle school and high school, all the way through I wanted to study in college, and my first 10 years, pretty much in the professional world, after college, was all really about acting and a little bit of directing and producing, but mainly just acting. And it was a big passion of mine for a long time.
That is so cool. That is so really cool. So have you taken any skill from there into being a tech founder, or maybe in some of the other 2,000 things that you've done in between?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're a founder and especially you're a VC backed founder, and you're out, you're working with customers, you're working with investors, right? All this stuff. I think people are often scared of rejection and failure, and like that's something as an actor that like I ate for breakfast. Like that was nothing because like when you're an actor, right? If you get one in any 100 auditions, you're crushing it. So your job is just to audition. Like you're just expecting to fail. It's not even like like there's like a hope, right? And so uh
Wow.
so for me, when it came time to like, doing pitches with investors and working with like working with customers and early beta customers, I was like, rejection like never meant anything to me. It's like, cool, okay, next, what can I learn from here? Keep it moving. The big difference though is like when you're an actor and you get rejected, like you're the product. So like you really
Yeah.
can't do that very much. But when you're a actor, it's like much easier. Like I can change the deck. I can add a feature. Like this is
Yeah,
very
that is true.
easy.
That is true. Did your dad feel the same way, or did he get tired of you? Like, because he needs to drive you around. You're 13. I mean,
When I was younger, yeah, me and my mom and dad would take turns like driving me into the city for auditions. Um, like for them, they were just always supportive. My dad was always really funny about it because like my mom understood the acting stuff because she was an actress, right? And it's funny. Then she went to medical school, right? So also doctor.
yeah,
But like my dad was so funny work ethic wise. He was always like, I don't care what you do, genuinely. He was like, I think you're an amazing actor, and I love seeing you act. I love seeing you do comedy when you do comedy stuff. You always, say you're my favorite, comic, right? You did some stand up and like improv stuff back in the day too. And he said, I don't care what you do as long as you do it well and like you
yeah,
you really work at it. So I remember my dad would like get on my ass as like, when I was like, just out of college, around, hey, how many auditions did you do this week? If you didn't do that many auditions and you were just focusing on your side job or
Mhm.
waiting tables or whatever, like he would get pissed off. He's like, that's not okay. Like
no,
get on auditions. I don't
yeah,
care if
that's
we're
the
on the
means to
call.
an end. It's not the
Right.
end. Yeah. Oh
Right.
wow,
So
that's
he was
yeah,
always about that. And I think I've taken that with me too, where it's just like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like you just got to get up to bat. Like you got to stay in the ring.
yeah. I think indeed for many founders, I think that's a key thing. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, as long as you get up as many times.
Yeah. I was
That's
reading
it. That's
actually
the trick.
Claudia, who's in the chat as our community manager. Last time she was in Atlanta, she got me this really awesome book that I've started to read. And about just like the life of a CEO. And like one of the things is like you just got to outfail your competition. Like it's not
Yeah,
about not failing. You just got to outfail them. And
exactly.
I'm so good at failing. Like you know what I mean?
And the only way you know that you're good at failing is if you do it many, 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 many
Oh
times.
yeah. Oh yeah. I can eat shit like better than anyone I know.
Yeah. Okay. So we always have this AI generated dilemma, right? And we have one for you as well. It's a
Sure.
little bit based on your acting career and something else that I know about you. So here we go, spilling some more beans. So there's this. Imagine this: there's a future super advanced AI, and it invents time traveling,
Hmm.
but it needs a subject for its first test, and it chooses you.
Okay.
And so the question is, what would you do? A, accept and go back in time to answer that one phone call that would get you on The Sopranos. And then, and then after that, you would go on to have the lead role in the smash hit series Punxsutawney Phil. But obviously, you can never go into no code. Or you decline and you stay in the present to make no code ops even bigger. But you run the risk that whoever the AI chooses next may alter your reality for the worse.
Ooh. It's so funny. So when Jess and I were talking a while back, we'll go into it later, but like, yeah, I missed when I was younger, I missed a phone call to be on The Sopranos
Yeah.
and for like a decent role. Um, and what's so funny? I would still choose this path, man, right? Because for a few reasons. One, Look, I love the arts. I have such a high respect for anyone that does it. But there's something about it. It's so like to provide consistent value and like keep showing up is just so reliant on so many external factors. Whereas I
Mhm.
feel like there's so much more factors within your control when you're building a company. And I know that sounds crazy,
Mhm.
but like there just are. Um, and I just really, I don't know, I really enjoy that. I also think that like, what is the highest level of contribution I can have? And I think that like a lot of the skills I learned as an actor and like, have like really kind of poured it over really well. But the highest level of impact I think I can have, right, is helping folks that are non-technical, right, like go through this path of like having a ton of, outsized technical impact. And like, that might sound nerdy, but like that is so exciting to me. And
Yeah.
so I find that really cool. And I find like the acting is like a way to like that I get to communicate and like relay that message. Also, selfishly, I don't know if I would have like ended up meeting my wife and like having these kiddos and like I wouldn't trade that for a credit on The Sopranos any day of the week, man.
But would you trade it for the lead in Punxsutawney Phil, man? I mean, come on. You get to see your
Yeah.
own shadow.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade him, man. Even for the lead role in Punch Tony Phil, I got really lucky, man.
Yeah.
My wife is just like I really married up, So like I got lucky.
Okay, so that's out there now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I totally won.
Well, that's good. Good for you. Good for you. So when you're talking about no code ops and operator, right? Was building operator always the goal? And maybe explain a little bit for maybe some people don't know what it is, but or did that sort of come from like the community feedback? Because you started with the community, I think, and sort of how did that plan come about, or was that like a master plan behind that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So look, when we started No Code Ops, like the kind of like my journey, right, went from like, acting to like, work, I started my own like thing as like in guerrilla marketing. And then when I was there, we got headhunted by a company that we worked with, right, as a client called Get. They're an Israeli-based Uber competitor. And when I was there, I just like had to learn how to do all this stuff without a dev team, and that was no code. I used no code, and then I got headhunted at Compass to do something very similar there, the real estate tech company, and I just fell in love with like creating these systems and processes, and not needing to know how to code was just like such a boost for me to have that impact. And I remember when I found out that no code was a term, I got super jazzed because I was like, oh my gosh, there's other people like
It's
me
legit.
think it's
Yeah.
legit. Like, that think about this stuff. This is so cool. Cause like when you're an operations professional doing no code stuff, like you're not in anyone's camp. Like the devs like look at you one way, but then like the business people look at you
Yeah.
another way. And it's like, but no one totally gets it. Um, and product managers are like, oh, you can actually like do all the things you set out. You're like, yeah, you don't have to wait for anybody.
Exactly.
Like nobody gets it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have to say, right, that when I found out that no code was like a thing, I got really jazzed. But everyone in the no code world a few years back, it felt like they were really talking about no code as like a way to build an MVP or have a side hustle or be a
Yeah.
founder, not necessarily for the ops professional. The only term I heard a few years back was like citizen developer. And like, I don't
Yeah.
know, like mixed feelings about that term. It feels a little bit like IT patronizing the business side a bit, right? It doesn't feel like
Yeah.
something that we came up with
I
for
think
ourselves.
that was by Gartner, I think, that term
Yeah,
for
it's like a very like
self-trouble,
Gartner
Yeah.
Forrester kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you really don't hear that much out in the wild. It's very rare. And so I was like, what if I just like found all the other ops folks that are doing this stuff and started jamming with them, right? And so I think I started the newsletter, so that was No Code Ops, right?
Yeah.
That's now over 10,000 folks. That then became the community, which is now over 1,300 vetted operations professionals. I'd say there's like three types of folks in there. There's like the the sales ops, marketing ops, people ops, no code architects, right? Like, that are working inside of a business. And then there are the call it like the agencies, consultants, freelancers that work on internal projects for like multiple clients. And then of course there's the people that do both of those things. And so it's all around like internal operations, automations, workflows, apps, efficiencies, all of that stuff. And so we finally found our tribe. And I think the coolest compliment we get on that front is people going, oh, wow, there's other people like me. And here you are. So like that for me is like very full circle. And we knew, when I met my co-founder, Brent, we knew we wanted to build product. Because in our mind, from the beginning, right, it was, we think that there's multiple problems here that need to get solved for no code to get to the next level within organizations. Yeah. One of those problems is the tooling is not where it needs to be from a cross application and infrastructure perspective for us to have, continued reliable, scalable, outsized impact. So that was like one problem. So it was like a technical problem. The other problem was like, you don't know anyone else who's doing this thing and no one's advocating for this as a role. So there's like the community bend. And then there's also like the education bend of like, what are the vendor agnostic ways to like learn how to do this stuff? And like, you never went to school for CS or learned databases or learned any of, CS 101 stuff, but like you got thrown into this role where you're building these huge and massive systems. So how do you go backwards and like then learn some of the basics that can help you go 20 steps further? And build more trustworthy stuff. So it was like education, community, and product. And so we'd started with the community and it was like, cool, we want to go into the product side. So we did over 300 customer dev interviews with just like folks, in and out of our community, and found out that the biggest thing holding people back, like we did like a small stint where like, we're like, okay, is it like error monitoring? That's like the really interesting thing. That's when we called the product switchboard. And we found that was like a part of the equation, but not like a bigger thing. We found that visibility and documentation were what no coders were doing. They were building documentation to like prevent errors in the first place. And we found that over like 30 of the different folks we were talking to literally all had the same like spreadsheet of just, here's all of the automations of our company. Here's what they do. Here's what platforms they live on. Here's what they touch field wise, endpoint wise, here's who owns it. Here's when we last updated it. And so the inspiration for Operator literally came from that spreadsheet. Was like, we want to automate that and make that less manual and then build everything else on top of that. So Operator really was, how do we replace that spreadsheet? And then eventually, how do we replace the other forms of documentation you have associated with that spreadsheet? In like wikis, and flowcharts and all of this stuff. And then eventually after that, the long-term vision is like, how do we cover the entire automation development lifecycle, not just the documentation and change management piece? And then eventually, how do we bring that to IT to get more trust and buy-in as well from the stuff these folks built? So that vision unfolded over time, but it only unfolded because we genuinely went in with just like, we have no idea what the solution here is. We just know it's something infrastructure-ish related. And then it just tons and tons of conversations.
Very, very cool. So there was a product idea, just not specific product idea. So there's the
idea. It was more thematic.
Product, yeah.
It was like, we want to solve like a general infrastructure thing for this type of audience, but we have no idea what that's going to look like, what tools it's going to integrate with, what like parts of the CI/CD workflow it's going to cover, how we're going to translate all of these like DevOps terms into things that no coders, are easy to work with and care about, right? So we didn't know.
Yeah. But your co-founder is a technical person, right?
He is. Yeah. So Brent's super technical, but also a no coder. He's done both, which is really cool. He actually built and sold the first no code education company. It was a boot camp for Bubble that got sold to Zero Code. So like the code free startup. But yeah, so he's been around for a while.
Yeah, nice. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys are now VC backed. Has that changed the vibe in the team in any way? Have goals changed?
No. So here's the cool thing, man. We've got investors on our end that have been aligned with us since the beginning, right? And at every, like pre-seed, seed plus, right? We always like found investors that were like in this for the long haul and like knew that we were category building, that we weren't just like, trying to take a very small part of a market, right? That it was already established. And that takes
Yeah.
time and education and learning. It's, when you're taking new dollars from folks that have never paid for something like this before, like that is there's a whole lot of challenges that come with that inherently.
Mhm.
Now the reward is higher, right? Because if you're first to market and you really grow fast, like there's a lot of really good stuff that can happen there. And that's what VCs are betting on. And so look, like one of our investors literally named Slow, right? Like they're okay with like the long burn. And like,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, been a part of the team since very early on, both like the patience of our investors, and the fact that like we were VC backed from very, very early on. But as
Yeah.
opposed to just like taking all that money and just like throwing it at things like, ads or super
Yeah.
fancy like marketing materials, right? Like, I don't know, we just invested back into the community and like brought on Claudia, who's like, obviously, like the most epic community
Yeah.
manager of all time, right?
Yes.
And like, we're starting an education initiative in like the next few months. And like, we try to give back to the community as like much as we can. And we did that from the earliest days. So we were running events and community way before we had any semblance of product and like doing it all for free.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing because yeah, like we're in this bubble where we know what no code is, but there's so many people who don't know that yet. And then sort of
So many
getting
more.
everyone in no code at least like together and spreading that idea is definitely also for operator. I can assume like you say, it's like category building is a very, very important yeah, field to grow so that more people will use this. Is
Yeah.
there anything that if you look forward, like I don't know, like maybe you could travel forward in time 3 years with that AI. And is there anything that you would hope for future Phil and for future operator, like specifically that you're sort of aiming for?
That's a good question. This is what I hope, right? Um, in terms of like the platform, I want us to be something that helps operators first, right? And sticks with that, right? It's why we started with ops and like not IT or security or GRC stuff, right? We start with ops because like we genuinely want this to be helpful for them in a multitude of capacities. So that we continue with that it serves the ops folks, right? That it takes the works the ops folks are doing, and better gets support, alignment, governance and all of that stuff from the IT counterparts and dev counterparts they have at larger organizations, right? And that there's a way for them to come into this product. And that like we have a very specific kind of user group that we focus on right now. But over time, I want operator to be something that you bring into the earliest stages of your no code stack building journey. And it stays with you all the way through like, the largest implementations at like public companies, right? With like hundreds of citizen developers or,
Yeah.
no code automators or, whatever it is, right? Like, I want it to be with you for that whole journey. Just like, devs bring in observability tools or GitHub or CI/CD tools, like from the very earliest
Yeah.
stages. Like I want us to be that for someone's entire journey.
Cool. That is quite the vision. I like it because I think yeah, we're also obviously very much sort of operational people in our company, and it's really good to have tools that really support the process instead of like yeah, it's
right, because
but
right
it's
now
really enabling.
you build an automation, right? So like the power of no code today, right? For all these ops folks out there, and then everyone knows this, right? Like you can just get in Zapier, you can just get in Make, or you can just get in Trigger, right? And just like build something super fast. And that's amazing because like the time to build that in the past was like forever. But now you can build something super fast and have impact immediately. But what ends up happening over time is if you keep doing that, that stuff adds up. And what's unfair to no coders is that the more systems you add to these stacks, the more people you add, the more departments you add, the more workflows you add, the more legacy systems or other apps you bring into the fold, the more fragile it all gets. And that's just like not fair to the business. It's not fair to the platforms. It's not fair to the builders. It's not fair to the stakeholders, right? And it's and like these tools are meant to be modular and work together. And so our thinking is like, we want to over time be really agnostic to like what automation tools you're bringing in. Like so many of the Zapier folks, that are on the platform today, like we're releasing Make, very soon, which we're really excited about. But like, it's not just multiple iPaaS platforms. It's like people automate parts of their overall workflows in HubSpot automations and Airtable workflows and webhooks and cron jobs and Google App scripts and Airtable scripts, right? Like it's all over the place. And like those processes are essentially the products that we as ops folks develop. And the fact that there's no one place to like see how that all works in a live updated capacity where you can further like improve on, show ROI for, get buy-in from IT that like you're not going to break everything. Like that's just really frustrating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel that buy-in is a big one that you need. Yeah, very clear. So we have a chain question every time, and last time we had David Sparks on the show, and David Sparks works in regulatory affairs for a healthcare AI company, and he had the following question for you. Yeah, it's really interesting what they do, to be honest. So here we go.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Phil, you run a community of operations people, and I assume they all or a majority of them use AI. My question is, how much talk is there about the upcoming AI Act within that community? Are people talking about it? Are they ignoring it? Curious.
It's a great, it's a great call. They're talking about it. From a multitude of angles, right? I think when this new boom of AI first started coming out, right, that I think the folks, in our kind of social sphere and in our community, I think the biggest kind of talking point that everyone was the big elephant in the room was, does this mean the end of no code, right? Like all of these platforms, right? Because if you can just prompt, a web app out of nowhere, right? Like, do you even need any of this stuff? Or if you can just, if you can just, write some Lambda functions right out of ChatGPT, like, do you even need an iPaaS tool? And what's so interesting is like, AI has done nothing but been more of a boom to no code. Like it is so fascinating to me. And I think the reason, and like, I think that, because everyone in our community is talking about like how to bring AI into their workflows, right? So whether that's like bring AI into a step of an automation or running a process, using AI or using AI to generate certain things within a workflow. I'm even using it like every day in our, so one thing I've started to do is after like a demo call, I have a Zap that takes my grain recording, runs it through OpenAI with a very specific prompt of like, write a follow-up email from me from this call that is not cringe. And by the way, if you haven't used that is not cringe in your AI prompts, you should be. It makes language so much more human and natural sounding. It's
that's a fantastic tip.
Huge. Watch the difference. It is insane. So, and then put it in my drafts in my Gmail. And so I'm still human in the looping it and like, coming back and like sending it and editing it. Right. But like, so everyone's using it. Right. But the fascinating thing is that for the ops folks, how much people still want to mess with the interface of like drag and drop no code tools. as opposed to like text writing things out. People still want control over the decisions made at certain points in the process. So like I just think we're like in interesting times. But yes, the short is like we like on the no code front, like we see and especially in the community and the ops folks, we see tons of talk about different AI tools, different ways to bring AI into your workflows, etc. But it's just adding to the value of what people are doing. And I think there's also like people are loving some of the AI that's just naturally coming into the tools themselves, like AI natively in Airtable, or AI being used to like debug something in Zapier, or AI being used to like, you can literally use AI to like write triggers in some iPaaS tools like Zapier now too. So it's like, it's really interesting how it's having an impact. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So we have some questions from people, and if you still have questions, please do put them in the chat under the event. We will pick them up. But the first question I wanted to go to, this I think is really nice because you know a lot about this. What advice would you give to someone aspiring to become an expert in no code?
Yeah, it's
Start
really
with operator.
No, you don't need to start with this yet. One day we'll be there from the beginning, right? My thing is this, is from the operations angle, right? I say find one thing at your job, right? Start where you are, right? Find one thing at your job or something you're interested in, right? But let's just say you work in CX or sales or marketing or something. And one thing that is the combination of all of these, the business and management / leadership or your manager really care about moving the needle on, something that you are passionate about and have a direct knowledge about the inner workings of, and something that you can use a free or freemium, no code tool to improve even by 10-20%. Combine all of those things and use dummy data and just start building, because you learn by doing in no code. You don't learn by just, like there's part of it where you're sitting and watching and learning, right? But I think that comes a little bit later. I think you got to learn it just by getting hands-on with it at first. So I'd say that's the first thing, right? Because when you do all of those three things, you naturally build momentum in your organization and then get more support to do bigger and better things, and or learn how to do either some freelance work from that you can do outside of work, or use that to get another job at another place that will let you do that stuff. So I think there's just benefit to your entire career, no matter if you want to be like a chief automation officer or a head of RevOps, or starting your own no code agency, or whatever it is, whatever path you choose to take, or any combination thereof. I think just by starting really small with something that's in the kind of the Venn diagram of those three things, I think is really important. I think the other thing is surround yourself with people that are doing this stuff. So it's easy to ask questions and share your journey. And like, that's where the community, I think, is really, really good. Like, we have multiple events every week in no code ops. It's free. The Discord's always live and super active. Claudia is like a mega super connector that can connect you to anybody, right? Like, just come and like say, hey, like, here's what I'm doing, and like feel that support and like watch other people do this thing, because you're always the average of the people that you hang around. And like, if you're hanging around people that are actually doing this and making this a reality, that are advancing their careers with no code, that are starting their own agencies with no code, it'll seem less unreal to you and it'll become more real.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's better than my advice to just start with operator. That's actually a good game plan, right?
I mean, look, yeah. I'll take that too. But I think we come in later in the picture. Once you build things and then it gets really messy, then come talk to us. We'll help you clean it up.
And you mentioned Claudia, who actually has a question. Here we go. What are the biggest struggles companies are currently facing when adopting no code internally?
Thank you, Claudia. So I think there's a few elements, right? I think one, there's still this perception from technical IT, et cetera, on like the leadership front, that like no code is still kind of like a use it for MVPs internally or externally, right? Use it for experiments, use it for like personal productivity stuff. But like, do we really want to build core company workflows around this thing? And I think that now that no code's been around for, at least in this generation, I know no code's been around since Excel, really, right? And like Lotus Notes, but like this generation of no code tools, I think, it's gotten to a point where I think people are starting to trust the fact that like it is more scalable, it is more reliable. But what people struggle with in the adoption front is like giving the keys of the kingdom of critical workflows to people that just don't know how to run systems and databases, or like what redundancies are, or like, because when you have code, right, and you're writing things in code, like there's all these practices around it, right? There's commenting on your code, there's documenting it, there's like, versioning, there's, all of the, there's like multiple people involved with like a pull request, like approving it. And like, there's all these stopgaps and best practices that make it so that one person can't bring down the whole thing easily, at least, right? Whereas like with no code, you'll have someone in the ops team like build out all of this amazing stuff, and then all of a sudden they'll leave the company and then people are like, oh, we don't know what's going on here, right? And like that sense of security around both like, what do handoffs look like? How do we make this like not just rely on one person and their knowledge? I think that's been kind of one of the missing elements. And I think it comes back to the earliest days of no code ops, when it's like, it's part of best practices challenge, right? Like, and if like, if you haven't already taken like the 9x, go9x.com, like, we're partnering with them soon, some education stuff, but like you can go there now and like take their free no code operator course to learn some of the fundamentals. You should, if you're in this field, like it's so good. But like operators learning the fundamentals, gaining trust at scale from like, and talking about what we do publicly. No code founders are so good about talking about what they do. Founders raising funds are so good talking about what they do publicly. But like, ops folks were just so insular inside of our companies that like, we got to find ways to talk about what we do more and share our wins. And like, I think when we normalize it, that like, no, major systems and critical infrastructure can be built with no code tools and be trusted with these folks. Like, that's what changes. So I think like the biggest holdup for adoption is like the no coders who are building super fast and aren't going back and like learning some of those basics. Like, database 101, API 101, WebEx 101, all that stuff. Right. And not having the tools they need, which we're hoping to, I think, change with operator. But I think the tools themselves have actually done a pretty good job of like selling themselves like we're actually pretty robust, and like you can rely on us on like the scalability front. I think they've actually done a pretty good job at that.
Yeah. And Raul also makes a good point. I've put it here. It's like people think that there's not more than just an ERP tool in the market, and that's what he says he finds when you visit companies. I also see that like there's a lot of like, okay, so you have this ERP tool and then we'll build everything custom around it with code, even though it's not meant for it.
No,
and there's so many better ways to do that. So,
and look, I think that the evolution has been right. There's like ERPs at kind of like the center of the business, right? And everything else is like either custom around that, but then it went, okay, everything's like low code, but like still pretty much code, right? Like, like you're messing with Apex and Salesforce, or like you're doing like some crazy stuff that it's like pretty close to code. And then there's like really expensive B2B SaaS vendors that are like hyper specific in a certain area with like little to no, or maybe a medium level of like customization, but like you're paying for that like heavily. And then now the kind of biggest iteration that we've seen is like, well, what if each department can, around an ERP or around like, some centralized CRM or tool, whether that's built on no low code or, vertical SaaS or not, how can each department have its own view into the data that they care about and work with each other? Like, and that's where the really interesting stuff happens. Right. So like, I just see like no code and low code, like eating vertical SaaS as lunch, like all day for certain departments and companies, especially as like now you're getting this whole new range of folks that like the tools are really powerful and the people on the ground are really, really smart and really, really creative and like grew up as like digital natives. And so like they just get it. And so a lot of people, you know, who are like up and coming in these companies on the ops side are just like, yeah, why like beg for vertical SaaS? It's going to cost like thousands of dollars when it's just like, I just like build this out on like Airtable and like an Airtable interface. Like, it's like, why do I need to do all of that? And it's going to be exactly what I want.
Yeah. That is how it is. We will have time for one more question. I have one I think is interesting to sort of tie it all back together that I have here. It's given the high rejection rates in acting and startups, what's your key to handling it?
It's a good question. I tell myself this a lot, both with you know, sales and when I was an actor. My job is to not get people to say yes. Like you just can't do it. You know what I mean? And even if you do it, is like, I don't know, like convincing folks or like whatever. Like that's not my job. My job is to, as efficiently as possible, get my way through the nose to find those people that like when I show up, they're like, we've been waiting for you. You know what I mean? Because they're out there, right?
Yeah.
They're out there. And I truly believe that they are out there. I believe that there's investors that just don't know who we are yet, right? That are like, oh my God, just this is amazing. Like maybe they need to understand a little bit more or like whatever, but I'm not like converting them from a no to yes. I'm converting them to like, I want to learn more to, you know, like, let's do this thing. Right. And same with customers, right? Like we don't try to convert customers like hard. In fact, like, you know, even for our beta, we're like, look, here's our monthly cost for operator. It's all paid. Like we don't do like, you know, we don't do like a freemium model or anything. We're like, look, you know, if you don't like it after a month, we'll just give your money back. Like we're really like, it's not like, I'm not trying to convince you. So, the thing that I try to keep in mind that like keeps me like kind of on the mission is like, I take the no's and I hear them, right? But I don't, it doesn't really get in front of me because I just, it doesn't get in my way because I know that there are people out there that we want to serve. And like, maybe that has to open up a little bit more. Maybe that has to change a little bit. And it's going to iterate and fluctuate over time. But we know there's something that people really care about here because we deeply care about it. And like, you know, you don't build 10,000 person newsletter and 1,300 people into a community and, you know, start, you know, building out, you know, this, you know, a ton of VC dollars and like, you know, all these people in our beta, like who are in, you know, Slack with us every day, like asking for new things. Like you don't get to that if people don't care about it. And so I believe that there are people that care about it. And it's my job to find them because last thing I'll say is this. I believe if I'm doing my job right as a founder, that you as an investor or as a customer will be so radically thankful for us showing up and doing the thing that it was worth all of the punches in the face to get to you for me. Like, that's what I believe.
Yeah. I think that's a nice one. Well, for someone who got punched in the face a lot, you look pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just, you know, it covers up all the, you know, but yeah, like I believe that that's worth it. And I'm willing to eat it. Like, because you know what, like, and it's funny. I was talking to Wade, who's the CEO of Zapier a while back. And one thing we talked about is like, you know, if this thing didn't show up for me, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my career. Right. Like, I got the trust to build these amazing things because of, you know, the Zapiers and Google Sheets and Endboarder, which is like a big tool used in Pronto forms of the world. And so if those folks not shown up and like did all of this stuff and got to that point, like I wouldn't be where I'm at in my career. Right. So
definitely. Yeah.
And they took a lot of punches in the face to get to where they're at, you know? And so like, that's the way that I kind of see it.
I think that's a key point indeed. Like you always see the success, but you never see sort of the struggles that have gone before that for years and years, or like the 3 failed startups or something that people had back in
Oh,
the
yeah,
day.
man.
Stuff. So you just gotta hang in there. I guess that's the most important one.
Yeah. And I think people are
Um,
always scared of just like, if I'm like, or am I holding on too much? Am I just like not? No, you got to listen to the no's, right? And you got to have some objective like times with yourself. But like, you just, you just got to keep going. Also,
Yeah.
this is both things. Yeah, hold both.
Indeed. That's all for today. In sort of time, we've taken a little bit more time today than we've done before. It was such a good conversation. It's yeah. But the next episode will be live on April 24th, and we'll have Thijs Trommelen on. He's the founder of Growers, which is a no-code, low-code agency, and like you, Phil, which is funny. He also had quite a journey to get to where he was now. He also had a guerrilla marketing agency at some point.
So random.
So yeah, thanks for coming on a show. And as we always end with, what is your chain question to Thijs?
Yeah, so for him, it would be like, what? I'm curious to hear from somebody else who's done this. What skills have you brought like from guerrilla marketing into being a founder that have really translated well for you?
Cool. We'll ask Thijs that question as we've asked you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, dude, this was amazing. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being a good buddy, like not only online, but like Jesse actually showed me around Amsterdam when we were in person together. And,
Yeah.
just, good to have a buddy across the pond, but also one that I know I can reach out to and jam with this stuff on, and just who's doing amazing stuff in the no code world. So thanks for everything you do for the whole movement and everything, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. Like I said, Thijs will join us on April 24th. If you like the show, we are also available as a podcast. You can check it out on automationcaffeine.com. Thanks for tuning in again, and we'll see you on the 24th.
Cool. Take it easy, y'all. Bye.
Bye.